Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Managers Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Josh Cromwell, EMU Women's Basketball Student Manager. And in place of our normal co host, Buddy Brown, today we have another fellow EMU Women's Basketball Manager filling in, Jamie Moore.
I'm really excited to be here today and start talking about women's sports. It's
Awesome.
a great topic.
Very happy to have you, Jamie. So we're going to do something a little bit different with the podcast today. As our viewers know, often we'll break down some X's and O's and talk more basketball. But today we kind of want to talk a little bit about why women's basketball has really exploded onto the scene. Not just women's basketball, but women's sport in general, and how far it's come in just such a short time.
Absolutely. And it's really having a moment right now. It's exploding all over the place. And the WNBA is expanding. College arenas are selling out. Players are becoming household names. It's a first of its kind.
Absolutely. And today we're going to kind of take a closer look as to why all of those reasons are the way they are and how it has led to the expansion of women's sports. So without further ado, I think we should just jump right in, if you're good with that.
Absolutely.
One of the biggest things we've seen over the last few years is media coverage and visibility. It's been absolutely huge for building the brands of all of these leagues. Social media has just views have skyrocketed for each and every league, including the WNBA. Anything you want to add?
Absolutely. I mean, just as recent as 10 years ago, it'd be hard to find a women's basketball game,
Good point.
And now we have ESPN, ABC, other streaming services. You walk into a sports bar, they've got it on. It's absolutely everywhere now, and the visibility is growing. It was almost unheard of walking into a sports bar and women's sports being on TV, let alone women's basketball.
True. It's everywhere now. And it's not just like ESPN and ABC, but ESPN Plus has been huge because lower levels of college athletics and women's sports can be seen now. EMU, for instance, is not always going to be on ESPN or ABC, but it can be on ESPN Plus. So it just increases viewership across the stage. It's been huge in bringing names out too. I mean, we've seen stars come from it as well.
I mean, the NCAA women's tournament drew over 18 million viewers alone. That was more than any NBA playoff game that week.
More than the men's Final Four as well.
It just blows my mind.
Absolutely. And like I said, with that have come, breakout stars, which is another key point in this. Star athletes. I mean, everyone knows Caitlin Clark. Everyone knows Angel Reese. I mean, those are huge, but it seems like exactly at this point, especially with their rivalry and their beef on the big stage, what they did in college. But with that, like we've seen more across the board. I mean, every time I open TikTok, I see a video of Sophie Cunningham, Indiana Fever star, as well, advertising things and being a face for the league. Obviously, she's blown up this season. It doesn't just stop with the WNBA, though. I mean, you see massive stars in women's sports across the country and across, different sports, like Alex Morgan for soccer, how huge she's been for young women. Coco Gauff, who's absolutely taken over, the women's tennis scene, along with, veterans like Serena and Venus Williams and those as well.
How could you not talk about them when talking about women's sports and pioneers in getting women's sports recognized in brand deals and partnerships? I mean, again, talk about breaking barriers.
They've been huge for that. They've absolutely been huge for that. And some of the coaches as well, they've been absolutely huge in just growing the game. I mean, I think of Dawn Staley at South Carolina. She's been phenomenal. Kim Mulkey and some of her outfits, not always my personal favorite, but she is a phenomenal coach. And I think her personality is fantastic for the league and growing the sport.
Well, one thing I would definitely say about women's sports and growing brand is girls know how to dress. I mean,
I can't really say anything about that one.
That's huge in building a brand. That is huge in building a brand. And a lot of these powerhouses, not just players, but coaches, really lean into those big personalities and they know who they are. And that's also something that's really important in women's sports and making sure that girls are represented everywhere. And you don't have to be a certain type of girl to play a certain sport. You can be super feminine and more of a Barbie, like Angel Reese.
Sure.
You can be more laid back, a little bit more of a tomboy. It really, really stretches to all girls.
Yeah, and I think that builds fan bases and loyalty, and specifically more women growing up watching the sports, which is obviously huge for viewership and empowerment. I mean, you're seeing more women at lower levels, young girls, get into sports like soccer and basketball and others. Like it's just helping to really grow not just women's basketball, but all of the games. So I think that's huge, especially if they can find someone, a star that they can resonate with. And that's kind of goes back to social media. I mean, you see Caitlin Clark all the time, and she talks about how she wants to invest in this next generation of young ladies and young men, and getting them involved in sports and teaching them how to love the game of basketball as well. So I think that's absolutely huge. I could not agree more, and that helps build that fan base going forward. And kind of with that, transferring into another point, investment and in institutional support. I mean, we've seen so much more branding these days get involved, especially with the WNBA. I mean, you see them all. Caitlin Clark has Nike commercials. Angel Reese is all over the place. I mean, you've seen it across the board. More and more major companies are investing in women's sports, and specifically the WNBA, which is huge for building a league that is sustainable financially going forward.
Talking about league sustainability going forward, the WNBA already plans on expanding to 5 new cities in 5 years is their goal, and Detroit is included on that.
As well.
And that is also something amazing, getting to bring the WNBA home and getting to fill the arena, not just with men's sports now. Would be the first women's sport.
Yeah. Well,
long-term
for a lot of our fans, they may be familiar with, but some may not. Detroit used to have a WNBA team, the Detroit Shock, and then with the league, going through some struggling times, especially financially, they had to remove some of the franchises, and Detroit, unfortunately, was one of those. But for a while, there was a good period of years where the Shock were actually the largest. They owned the largest number of attendance for women's basketball in the WNBA. So I think Detroit fans are fantastic sports fans in general, as we've seen. But I think it's especially huge to have a WNBA team back. I think that place is going to be rocking once we get them back here in the next couple of years. So I think that's huge. And again, it goes to the sustainability of the league. They're not just surviving anymore. We are focusing on actually growing and thriving. So that's huge. That's huge. And with that, we've seen numbers increase for the USWL as well, the Women's Soccer League. So it's just fantastic across the board. Multiple sports, we're seeing an uptick in, financial support and ad revenue. But not just those, but, the average fan that's really getting involved, and, attendance is skyrocketing. As well as that financial support.
I mean, if we want to talk about attendance records, LSU in their last season had an average attendance record of 10,607.
That's so crazy.
I mean,
such a big uptick from where we were. I mean, Iowa is up there as well. I mean, obviously with the Caitlin Clark years, but again, they have a great fan base. And I think part of that, comes back to NIL as well. The average, salary in the WNBA, and they're currently working through this, as we're doing this podcast, we actually have breaking news that the CBA has been extended for an additional 30 days. They're still working through that contract, but the average salary, is the base is $60,000, and it only goes up to about $250,000. So, compared to men's sports, it's way behind. But even just, you think a professional athlete, that's not a very high salary. And so it's awesome to see what NIL has done for college. One, because it's grown the game in that way too, but also it's allowed some of these stars to have some financial backing, through ads and other things in college, through NIL, specifically through the school. So that when they get to the WNBA, they're already a little bit more set, as before, it was hard for some stars to sustain with the salary that they were making, families and other responsibilities. Now there's more financial backing even before, some of these stars reach certain leagues like the WNBA.
And honestly, it also opens up avenues for women to become more financially independent as well. And even if a woman who is fantastic in her collegiate career and decides not to play pro, she still has that as some sort of income to be debt free for school.
Absolutely.
And start that career and that career path how she wants. And so it doesn't just set a foundation for girls and ladies getting into the pros. It also sets foundations for women who choose not to. So that's also something that's really awesome with NIL.
Yeah, and it's getting companies involved too, because companies obviously they want to support women's sports, but they also want to support something that is, growing in size and the amount of viewership. Something called the Athena Pledge, where some of the top companies like AT&T, Cisco, Coca-Cola, Gatorade, a number of others have come together to try and support women's sports even more. A special push from them to invest in and to show more ads and to involve more women's athletes. And just some numbers. The Deloitte is one of the key founders of this as well, and they have produced a WNBA app. Since 2022, we've seen an increase of 1,467% in app downloads, 498% growth in monthly active users, as well as a 404% increase in League Pass subscriptions. So as you can see, the numbers back it up as well. It's not just a feeling. It's not just walking into a sports bar and seeing, women's sports on TV, unlike, 10, 15, 20 years ago, but the numbers back it up as well. It is a growing league.
It's tangible. It gives something tangible to what we've been seeing in the last few years. Because again, this has only been in the last few years that we've really seen
Absolutely.
This blow up.
It's really exploded in the last 5-6 years.
Absolutely.
Especially. And like I said, I think some of that has to do with NIL. I mean, it's not exclusive to that, but we saw the NIL, NIL became, part of college athletics in 21, 22. And since then it's obviously exploded, and there's some talk of, how can we sustain this? But for now, it's been huge in producing, more athletes, more special moments, and, more revenue to college athletics, as well as, professional leagues like the WNBA. And like I said, with all of that comes a changing cultural attitude. It's especially important to me, as someone that's worked with men's basketball before, but also this year working with women's basketball, getting to see those athletes on a daily basis, just seeing the passion and fire that they have, the work ethic that they have. It's great to see them finally get representation and more respect. And it's a long way still. We're still working on it.
Absolutely.
But it's great, just from the male perspective, it's great to see women get some more, progress towards the respect that they deserve.
I mean, for decades, female athletes have been clawing and working their way to push boundaries that should not necessarily be there. And finally, we've seen that breakthrough. And I mean, going back to what I said earlier about representation for young girls, especially, this doesn't just affect current players and coaches. This sparks an entirely new generation of female athletes. And again, going with changing cultural attitudes towards women's sports as a whole, not just women's basketball, is just amazing to see. And especially with younger people, I would definitely say that this rise has come, but that does not mean that older folks have not garnered a new appreciation. I've heard middle-aged women, middle-aged men now talking and actively watching women's sports matches, not just WNBA games,
so
women's soccer.
The league is growing when I'm getting texts from my dad asking about who is this and who is Caitlin Clark and what does she mean to this? And it's been fantastic to see the amount of eyes that are on, multiple leagues now, but especially again, WNBA, being from a basketball background, it's great to hear from older generations as well, who are now becoming interested. And it's phenomenal basketball. I mean, just look up Caitlin Clark, her ability speaks for herself, and she's just one of many. I mean, obviously we have a long line of very successful, female athletes, especially at the basketball level in the WNBA, but it's never been better than it is now. I mean, every team has multiple stars. The competition levels, increasing. It's not just one or two players or teams dominating the league. It's much more spread out now, and there's way more contenders, which makes for way more interesting basketball coming down the stretch.
And I know we kind of talked about it a little earlier, but the impact that social media has also made on these cultural attitudes, female athletes actually getting to not necessarily even market themselves, but share personal things about themselves and be able to be online. You see the behind the scenes, you see that sisterhood in teams and in locker rooms. And I know it appeals to younger women, but it also gives women of all ages role models. And I mean, we're pushing boundaries we've never seen before. I mean, just recently, Angel Reese and Suni Lee, Olympic gold medalist, walked in the Victoria's Secret fashion show. That's a brand that for decades has needed a revamp on their business as a whole, but especially that Victoria's Secret fashion show. It has been so underrepresented for so long. And in the last couple of years, again, much like women's sports, they've been doing a ton of rebranding to work on getting representation in there. And for the first time ever, Angel Reese was the very first female athlete to walk in that show. Suni Lee, second. They are the only two to do it. And I know it may sound like a silly fashion show, but it makes such a big impact. And I mean, I have friends who know absolutely nothing about sports, and I have heard my best friend mention names like Angel Reese.
It's huge.
Caitlin Clark.
It's huge for
willing to go to women's basketball games with me, watch them on TV, actively turn them on, message me about things. And it has really opened up avenues that women's sports aren't just for female athletes or ex-athletes, ex-collegiate athletes. It really is for everybody. And just because you didn't grow up necessarily playing a sport doesn't mean that it's not accessible to you now. And seeing that is just amazing.
No, it's huge. And like I said, it's directly backed up by numbers. It's huge for that representation. I mean, an article from the Nielsen rating stated in 2019, just 5.7% of ESPN SportsCenter coverage was dedicated to women. Data collected between 2018 and 2020 found that the NCAA men's basketball teams received 60% more funding than their female counterparts. Up to this point, women's sports have been undermarketed. And so it's huge to see this cultural shift where people are finally starting to take notice. Across women's sports, the 2024 season flowed seamlessly from the historic first that closed out 2023. On the heels of the historic 2023 outdoor Nebraska Huskers women's volleyball match that set a new record for the largest crowd ever to watch a women's sporting event in the United States with 92,003 fans.
Amazing.
It was an amazing spectacle. In attendance, Iowa women's basketball has set their own. The stage was set for 2023-24 women's basketball season with the crossover at Kinnick as the Iowa women's basketball team drew 55,646 fans to Kinnick Stadium for their 94-72 exhibition victory over DePaul on October 15th of last year. Set an NCAA women's basketball attendance record and marked the first time in a women's game was played outdoors in a football stadium. So I think all of these things, they're not even remotely gimmicky. I think they're huge for building, women's sports in general. I think, it brings more viewership, like you said, more
Absolutely.
eyes. People who may not have even paid any attention to sports coming into this point are starting to realize just how popular that, women's sports and women's basketball in particular are becoming.
And I mean, having a women's basketball game in a football stadium, that just goes to show how much demand that there was for spots at that game. I mean, just
55,000 fans.
Yeah.
And I can't even imagine, something like that happening, like we said, even 10 years ago. I think there would have been pushback. I don't think there would have been that much interest. like I said, it's thanks to the cultural shifts, but it's also, again, especially in this situation, again, thanks to stars like Caitlin Clark, who are so huge in, everyone wants to watch Caitlin, and for good reason. She's an amazing basketball player, and she's just so fun to watch on and off the court. So it's a combination of a lot of factors, but, as we've seen, women's basketball and women's sports as a whole is definitely on the rise.
Absolutely.
So with that, just kind of, closing and wrapping up, just thankful, especially in my end, to be able to work with, women's sports, women's basketball, to get to see how much work they put in and day out. They're incredible people, especially for our team, it hits home, but across the board, and not just in basketball, but in women's soccer and women's lacrosse and women's volleyball, like we mentioned. Their effort, their hustle, their work is finally starting to get the respect and recognition that it deserves. Now, we're a long ways out.
Oh, absolutely.
We're a long ways out, and we have a long ways to go, but we have taken huge strides in the last few years.
Women have constantly had to work harder to prove themselves, especially in the sports world. I mean, just to get a slice of recognition that men in the same field get every single day and make millions of dollars off of, and to be able to kind of see that ushering in of that new era of strong, powerful women.
Empowerment.
It's
for
absolutely
the
amazing. Absolutely. And it's not even just empowerment. It builds a really strong bond of sisterhood. And even if you don't know these women, there is just this connection between.
I mean, we've been able to witness it firsthand.
Oh, absolutely.
It's amazing to watch.
Absolutely. And to drop everything and help a fellow player, even a fellow player on another team.
Yeah. Just
absolutely willing to compete, yet have compassion.
Yeah, there's a special energy about women's basketball. It's fantastic. And I do think that we're living in really the start of a golden age. We've seen it change over the last few years. We've taken immense steps, like we mentioned, but I think this has sustainability. I don't think we're witnessing a flash in the pan. I think this is something that we're going to be telling future generations about as, the start of a golden era of women's sports. So I'm very, very excited to see what's next. And, imagine that, women's basketball, women's sports in general start to get equal coverage and equal investment, and all of a sudden the results speak for
equitable
themselves.
Marketing.
Equitable marketing.
It's amazing. And honestly, I can't wait to head out to Little Caesars in 2029. It has me excited.
Yes,
it has not just us in Michigan, but I know Toronto, Philadelphia. Those are other cities on
I believe Portland
the planet.
Well.
Yes.
And I don't believe they've announced the name of the Detroit team yet, but I certainly hope they bring back the Shock. So, but regardless of what they're called, I know that Detroit fans, being the great fans they are, and especially with the growth of the WNBA, I know that place is going to be, very exciting.
Absolutely.
So very, very exciting to have the WNBA back, after a longer than expected hiatus, unfortunately. But it's great to have them back in this great city. So we're very excited for that. And just really, really excited about the future of women's athletics as a whole, from the collegiate level, but not even just the collegiate level, from the youth level to the high school level to the college level to the professional level. It's just exploding across multiple sports and across, at this point, multiple generations. So very, very excited to see where we go from here.
Absolutely. And I cannot wait to see what this season has in store.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's it for our time on this episode of the Managers Podcast. As always, please like and subscribe. Next week, Buddy Brown will be back here with us. So excited to have him back as well. But for now, thank you so much for filling in, Jamie.
Absolutely. So happy to be here.
Really appreciated having you and having your insights. We will see you back on the next episode of the Managers Podcast. Thank you.